I am a 33 years old female, have been engaged to my fiancé, 37 male, for 5 months. We don't share finance because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with the 30%, that's why. He acts as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times he has tricked me to pay for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food. And in the middle of the meal he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad I whispered back, no. But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said, you have enough money, you could pay for everyone's food, 30%, remember? I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friends' food. I told him I went home, then stopped replying. An hour later he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate and childish for sneaking out like that and leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's gonna be married to. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. I'm a software engineer with a full-time job and a side hustle of doing freelance coding work in my own time. I've always been the type to have a side hustle I put a lot of my free time into. I get really bored sitting idle. My freelance hourly rates are $60 an hour, and at my full-time job, my hourly pay works out to about $40 an hour. So that's how I value my time. Anyway, over Christmas vacation, I was staying at my parents' house. My cousin was also staying over with her 3 young kids from Christmas to New Year's. I'd been planning on doing some work on my freelance projects when I had free time, in the mornings when my family had no plans. I wasn't in any rush. I was already ahead of schedule on them all, but I didn't really have anything else to do. It was in a really rural area and it's like an hour drive to the nearest anything. Then my cousin and her husband asked if I could babysit all day for 3 days so they could visit some friends in the area and hang out with just adults. I said I had planned on doing freelance work at the library, and she offered to pay me to babysit. I said I could if they got close to my freelance rates. She wanted a number, and although my freelance rates are $60, I didn't feel like that was right. It was high. But I didn't want to go too low. Honestly, babysitting 3 kids would be harder for me than the routine coding work I had for my freelance project. I don't know a lot about kids and I've never babysat for long, and I had a feeling it would be stressful and difficult. So I said $35, which is below what I make hourly at work, and what is the bare minimum I'd value my time for, if that time is spent doing difficult work. And she went crazy at me, saying that's a ridiculous rate for babysitting, that I was entitled and being selfish, that I'm trying to take advantage of how she didn't have other options, etc. I said that's way below what I'd be making if I had the time to do my own work, and I'd be putting off my own work to babysit. Her husband then got mad at me, saying that I was a 24-year-old girl, that I'm damn near a child myself, that my time is not worth that much and it's childish to say that it was, and that I was a stupid girl for not knowing that babysitting costs like $15 an hour. When I grew up and have kids of my own, I will see how stupid I was being. I was kind of done with being called stupid, so I just told them I hoped they could find someone else. My mom thinks that I asked for something offensive, and my cousin and her husband obviously did too. I don't want to go into tons of details. You need to know that for the last 7 years I have not been at home. And during this time my 2 brothers and sisters were still living there. While I was at home, our stepfather abused us mentally and physically. We lived in crappy houses that were covered in real garbage, including animal feces, absolutely everywhere. I haven't heard from my little sister since May. I'm pretty sure she was told to cut contact with all of us. We are her older siblings. My second sister, after my younger sister, is overweight and has spinal problems and has to diet and see a specialist she is not taken to. I told the social worker that I wanted to check on them because they were in a sorry state and because I'm not sure if there is still any physical or psychological abuse going on in the house. This genuinely worries me. I told them what happened to us, hitting walls, throwing things at us, swearing, belittling our character, etc. And told them repeatedly that I really just want to know what my younger brothers and sisters are not the same living conditions as they were. My husband supported me during the call and agreed that it was the right thing to do. All my siblings discussed this beforehand, except for my older sister, who moved out before things got bad, and the 2 who live in the house. We all agreed that this would at least let them know they were being watched and we weren't just disappointed in them, and maybe my mother and SD would keep the house clean nose, etc. CPS contacted my mother very quickly. Much faster than I expected. I mean within 3 hours. After that, my older sister, who lives far away and hasn't contacted me for months, calls and she gets mad at me because she knows I called. I didn't deny anything and just said, if they have nothing to hide, then they have nothing to worry about. It will all be over pretty quickly, to which she replied, what if it doesn't? If they are taken away? I said, I hope it doesn't come to that, and if it does, it's not on me. I didn't harm them. I didn't leave animal excrement around the house. I asked, would you let your children live the way we lived? She didn't answer. I asked again and she said, no. I'd keep a decent house, but it's not your job to tell someone else how to parent. I said, okay. So, if that's all, why did you call? I think we're done. She told me that we all need to get over what happened to us and move on. She left long before the violence started and she wasn't around, regardless of my personal experience. I can't help but feel like I did something wrong. I have limited contact with my mother because of her husband, and she denies that any of us have ever been abused. My sister asked, why don't you just come in and see the conditions? I told her, I can't be around my stepfather. I refuse to expose myself to this negativity again. Even though my husband and siblings agree that it was the right thing to do, I still can't help feeling wrong because of it. Like it wasn't my place. But if it wasn't my place, then whose was it? I really would like a third-party opinion on what I did. Am I wrong in reporting my family? Honestly, should I have just kept my mouth shut? I don't mind if I don't have any contact with my mom or older sister. They don't even know that I'm almost 4 months pregnant because we don't talk very much. So the possibility that I'll never have a real relationship doesn't bother me. What worries me is that I don't know if I was right. I called my mother's CPS based on previous experiences of psychological and physical abuse by our stepfather. I have not heard anything from my younger brothers and sisters for a long time, because communication was interrupted. We lived in appalling conditions. There were animal feces, rubbish and mess everywhere. We were beaten, things were thrown at us, etc. I told the police that I was not sure if something was going on for sure because, again, no contact. But I wanted them to check on my siblings. Was I completely out of sorts? I'm at the gym today and I'm walking towards an empty squat rack. 10 feet in front of, and 1 foot to the right of my rack is another rack that a girl Belinda is doing squats on. While walking up I briefly noticed that her leggings are see-through, and when she bends down in her squats you can easily tell she's also not wearing underwear. That's not my business, that's her choice. But it made me uncomfortable to take a rack that was kinda behind her. I had been waiting my entire gym session for one of these racks to open up, and this was my last lift before leaving. So I went ahead and took it. I went through my workout as normal. After every set I check my phone for 5 to 20 seconds. I track every single set for every single lift in a spreadsheet to note how much I lifted and for how many reps. Sometimes I need to remind myself what I did last week to make sure I'm progressing. Sometimes I'm just checking the time. Sometimes I'm changing the song on my Spotify. Tonight specifically, there was a very important basketball game being played, so I wanted to keep up with the score. So I use my phone a lot at the gym. I finished my third set when Belinda turns around and walks up to me, with her phone up yelling, "What the are you doing?" Perv stop pictures of me. I'm caught completely off guard, but I explain that I'm just taking notes on what I'm lifting. That I'm not paying attention to her at all. She's being extra loud so other people are looking at me, plus she's recording me, and she demands I go through my pics /vids to show her what I was recording, and I delete the ones I took of her. I try to again explain I didn't record anything of her at all. She's yelling that if I have nothing to hide I should have no problem showing her, so I insist on going to gym management. Once at the front we both explain our stories. She's still recording. The normal gym attendee asks me if I'm willing to show her, a neutral third party, my pics /vids. She also says if I have nothing to hide it's not a big deal and we can squash it right now. I refuse. I have my own uncensored pics in there plus those of my GF. I'm not gonna let anyone force me to show them for some bullshit. I do show her my spreadsheet, which shows it's been revised over 15 times in the past 50 minutes. So that proves what I was using my phone for. That was received well, but they still expected me to prove my innocence. I told them they need to review the cameras. Apparently only the manager has access to them, so I was told he'd call me before the end of the night, in about an hour. My GF tells me I should have just let them look at my phone because she doesn't mind and it would have cleared this all up. But I mind. I get that someone wouldn't want someone taking pics of them. But violating my privacy to prove I wasn't taking pics of you crosses a line for me. Just talked to the manager. He checked the footage. He couldn't see what was on my screen in the footage. But he said it looks like I had my phone pointed towards the ground right in front of me the whole time. In his opinion, not high enough to even take a pic of her, and never angled in her direction. Apparently I was gonna get banned from the gym if the cameras didn't absolve me. And also I'm not the first person that has been accused by Brenda, but she legit had a creeper before.